Okay, welcome to another episode of Thoughts and Bolts. I'm your host, Pedro Laveria. Um, in this episode, we're going to continue our series into the Bigelow Aerospace um, Advanced Studies leaks that have come out recently. Behind me, you can see the book Skinwalkers for the Pentagon and part of the appendix. Okay, so Skinwalkers at the Pentagon was written by Jim Lakatsky and Colin Kelleher. Jim Lakatsky was the director of OSAP, and Colin Kelleher was the operations manager. George Knapp, as you may know, is an Emmy Award winning news journalist from Las Vegas who co authored this book. This book did have to go through the Office of Pre-Publication Security Review in order to get published. So you have to understand that whatever is in there, it's sanitized, right? It says what they're allowed to say. Okay, but still, there's a lot of great information. Um, and what you see behind me is part of the appendix, highlighted, what's called the OSAP Technical Studies 1 through 12 approaches from MUFON. Now, MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network. It is the largest and oldest UFO studies organization in the world, and they do a lot of good work. And this report is 26 pages, and it's one of the reports that leaked recently online. Okay. So we're not going to go over the whole thing once again. We're going to go at this piecemeal, but I want to focus on this section called human interface. So I want to read the abstract. It says, the human mind is a remarkable instrument that may be used in the future to control various functions, including flight. The scientific study of implants found in human beings may lead to technologies which could lead to this giant leap. Unlimited possibilities for payoff exist in the form of mind control for everything from vehicles to military defense systems to medical advancements. Now, as you're watching this video, you live in the age of Neuralink, right? So Elon Musk has a company called Neuralink that's already doing this. Okay, they started with monkeys, and now they're doing it with quadriplegic people. You may have seen online the man who has a Neuralink implant in his brain, and with it, he's able to control his computer and just do really well at video games, among other things. Um, Now, what's really interesting here is that um, this is all about the so-called alien implants, okay, that are taken out of experiencers. Now, experiencers, for those who don't know, is the proper ufological term for abductees, people who have had close encounters of the third, fourth, fifth kind. Um, and this is because studies have shown that after a long period of time, the vast majority of these people do not view their experiences as negative, and many of them actually bristle at the term abductees because they don't. Many of them, a large majority of them, don't feel they were kidnapped. Um, and hey, who's to say they're wrong, right? It's not your experience; it's theirs. Okay, Hollywood be damned, right? Um, but this report is about implants taken from experiencers. Now, it's interesting that the working theory they have regarding these implants is that they're used as an interface for piloting craft. Um, but what's really interesting are these two photos, right? It says MUFON is in the possession of copies of X-rays, which may provide evidence of implants in unsuspecting U.S. citizens. The implants, which are about the size of the tip of a pen, were found in a 16-year-old female and a 76-year-old male from different parts of the country, one from the Northeast and one from the southwestern part of the United States. But what's even more interesting is their proposed plan of action for doing a scientific study of these implants. Now, I will remind you that OSAP was a Pentagon UFO program. It was a classified program with a $22 million budget. That's your taxpayer dollars going to this classified UFO program, okay, which was carried out by Bigelow Aerospace. Now, this was the plan of action that was proposed by MUFON. Okay, so it's interesting that even though this is a DoD program, they are taking insight and input from the private sector, from subject matter experts outside the government. And that's very interesting because, as Jacques Vallée has said in some recent shows, that the government really doesn't have much better information or data than public has. Okay. Now, granted, I mean, that might be oversimplifying things, right? They have satellites. You and I don't have satellites. Um, presumably, if they've had access to crash retrieval, specifically the CIA, and bodies and that sort of thing. And if you have some kind of access to that, even though those things are being cared for and preserved by private industry, contractors like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Patel. Um, Even if that's the case, yeah, you still that's a lot of data we don't have, right? So, if certain uh, sectors of the CIA, or small sectors of the CIA may have access to that, well, then they have more data than you and I. But in the case of OSAP, that wasn't the case, right? OSAP was a classified program. It was not a special access program. Um, Harry Reid tried to make it so, but that was blocked. And they were reaching out to subject matter experts in the public sphere, in the white world, okay, because they have a lot of good information. So this is really important to see that it's not all about the government, right? Private researchers, experiencers have a lot to offer us, and we don't need everything to be filtered through daddy government or through ex-employees of daddy government. Okay. But I digress. Now look, the plan of action. It was a 6-point plan of action, and I want to read through it. Okay. They proposed the creation of a team. Okay. This team would have one, a physician or dental surgeon licensed in the location of extraction to perform minor surgery. Two, radio frequency and digital electrical engineer with experience in the medical field. Okay. Three, a biochemist with a metallurgical background. Four, a biophysicist. Five, project administrator. And six, two mental health professionals. The role of the first mental health professional would be to discuss the pros and cons of the procedure with the experiencer prior to signing a consent form. The role of the second mental health professional would be to counsel the experiencer and to facilitate follow-up after the procedure. Again, the vast majority of experiencers through the duration of time view their experience as positive. And if you go back to the free study, something like 80% of them hope the experiences never end. Okay. So for them to give up an implant, okay, um, it's not an easy thing. Okay. It would have a lot of sentimental value, and it may facilitate whatever connection they have to the phenomenon. And so that's why you have the two mental health professionals, one to give informed consent and two to follow up to make sure they're okay after the procedure. Now, volunteer patients with implants have been detected in relatively current image scans would be needed. So they would want, again, kind of new experiencers, and with the latest kind of imagery, that sort of thing. So um, how this would go about, well, there's certain milestones they would have to hit, right, in order to get, you know, for professionals, right? There's a 3-month milestone, and there's a 12 to 18-month milestone. Okay. So all total, the goal for the initial project would be completion within 18 to 24 months. Okay. Now keep in mind that this was written in 2008, right? So if they were actually going to go through this, and let's say they were to go through it immediately, it would take 2 years to get through this whole process of extracting the implants from the experiencers, and then you know using these experts to understand how the technology works and possibly reverse engineer it, maybe. Um, but what I find interesting is that 2 years after this report was prepared for the Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, Dr. Bruce Tao of Arizona State University, wrote or published the two DIRDs regarding biomaterials and biosensors and biomems. Now, DIRD is a Defense Intelligence Reference Document. Biomems and biosensors are referring to implants. Okay, so we already have implant technology, and these implants, they can be injected into a human being through a needle. They're smaller than a penny. Okay. What's interesting is that this dirt that you can see here, you can get it from the DIA FOIA website. Okay, so the Defense Intelligence Agency Freedom of Information Act website, you can go to the ATIP section, okay, and download this dirt. What's interesting is that again, the dirt doesn't explicitly mention aliens or alien abductees and implants. But if you look at the context in which it was made, right? It was made for AAWSAP, right? And AAWSAP was interested in acquiring implants from experiencers. So that's the context of these dirts. What's interesting though is that I go on DIA FOIA and I can't find the biomaterials dirt. Is that still classified? Did I miss it? You tell me. But the biomaterials dirt isn't actually available to me at least. And here you go. This is what Dr. Bruce Tao made 2 years after this report was made. So again, did Bigelow Aerospace follow through on this? I don't know. I won't say yes. Um, but I think it's interesting that, the plan of action created by MUFON on their behalf would have taken 2 years and would have necessitated someone of the expertise of Bruce Tao, who 2 years later did write these two dirds. Now, keep in mind that the dirds, if you read them, what you'll see is that they describe the state-of-the-art understanding that we have in terms of science and technology regarding these subjects. So, for example, if you read the biosensors or biomems, DIRD, you'll learn about biosensors and biomems. Okay. Um, but again, go back to the context, right? The context is regarding UFOs. Why are these reference documents? Presumably because if somebody in DOD ever encounters these kind of implants, they can know what we human beings are able to do and then compare that to what the artifact actually does, and so ascertain whether or not this is man-made or not. Um, you see this also, for example, with the advanced space propulsion based on vacuum engineering dirt, right? All about the Alcubierre drive. As I went over in the last episode, that's all about the Tic Tac, right? How does a Tic Tac fly? How does an orb fly? How do these things, cover 60,000 feet in a matter of seconds and not, smush whatever it's inside? How do they cloak? How do they, go these incredibly fast speeds like Mach 10 without a sonic boom? Well, an engineered space-time metric would explain it. Okay, it's one possibility of how this is done. Um, Again, remember this Utah Ranch report of the different kind of entities encountered in the Uinta Basin during the AAWSAP years? Well, do you remember that the humanoid encounters were the only ones that happened in connection with a UAP sighting? I do. Remember, the humanoid sightings were the only ones that happened in connection with the UAP sighting, and the humanoid sightings were the only ones that happened in connection with a portal sighting. Okay, a portal, and that's why they made this dirt. Traversable wormholes, stargates, and negative energy. Okay, all of these dirts actually overlap. Not all of them, but many of them do. So you have to read more than one at the same time. And even though they're not presented as chapters on a book, you could, if you wanted to, arrange them as such. Because this dirt goes hand in glove with the um, advanced space propulsion based on vacuum engineering dirt. Okay. They overlap. And as you can see in this little image, you have two different kinds of wormholes, one between two universes, one connecting two universes, and one within connecting two different points in space within one universe. So reversible wormholes, according to this dirt, are physically possible. It's not an impossibility. It's an engineering problem, not a physics problem. Um, they can, in principle, exist. Can you and I make one? Not yet. So the question is engineering, but this is how you should read the dirts. This is a case study in esoteric writing, right? You read these dirts, you think, oh, this is strange. It's about, what science might look like in the future, what we may be able to do in the future, really kind of speculative science. But when you look at the context of what motivated the writing of these dirts, right? Um, what they're relating to, um, the unspoken context is ultimately important, right? Um, then you will understand what you're reading a lot better. Okay. So that's it for tonight. I hope you enjoyed this show. Um, again, read the dirds, read everything surrounding the dirds and understand the context. I've made two different videos on the alien implant issue. You can find those on my channel. But I mean, it just goes to show this newest leak just drives the point home even more, that this dirt, written by Bruce Tao, okay, was written because the Pentagon was interested in the implants that UFO experiencers, some of them, okay, have inside their bodies. Now, whether this was actually acted upon, no. I think it's interesting that, their timetable was 2 years. If this plan was acted upon, it was 2 years, and within 2 years, Rustal writes these things. Might be a coincidence, might not be. We don't know because we're only allowed the people who worked in OSAP are only allowed to say what they're allowed to say, for national security reasons, I suppose. But it is what it is. Until then, look inward more than you look upward. Learn to meditate. Learn to meditate and read fewer UFO books. And you'll be a lot happier and you'll understand the subject a lot better. Okay? Until then, this is your boy Pedro signing off.